what's poly versus monogamy, and essentially when you break it down to the basics, it's just when you're poly, you have consecutive relationships at the same time with more than one person, and they're amorous relationships. When you're monogamous, you're just with one partner. So that's really, at the end of the day, that's all it is. But I'm fascinated with the amount of ways you can be polyamorous. So you said your first experience with polyamory was toxic. Do you want to get into that a little bit? Or
yeah, so originally, I think, so it was kind of bad on both sides. First, how we even got into it. So this guy started, like, we were friends, but I mean, hey, he started hanging out with me. He fell for me, you know? I'm just saying. But when that was happening, there was another guy that I was into, but then that guy ended up going to jail, and I was like, oh, okay. So I was kind of like alone in a sense, and this guy was always around. So we started doing things, and I didn't want to make it official. Like, I didn't feel like I wanted to just be with him. So I basically asked, like, I don't remember how, but I was just like having like that like that daddy little girl relationship. That's what I was kind of aiming for. And so I knew with polyam, because I knew a little bit about it, but I was just like, oh, we can have basically an open relationship and see other people. So that's what we went about. And so I guess I assume that the thing is the communication and the boundaries, or like the expectations, wasn't clear, because the thing with him, he would get mad at me because I had more options than him, apparently. And the people that because he was having relations with another woman who was my friend. And so whenever he would do whatever he did with her, it was okay. But if he knew that I was doing something with someone else, he didn't like that. And then he also didn't like the fact that it was like I kind of introduced him to this girl. So he felt that I was giving him someone to be with and that he couldn't find it on his own.
his partner.
Yeah. And so there was this one woman that he told me that he kind of had feelings for, and I was supporting it. Like, I even set up kind of like a double date in a sense, like, because I wanted to meet her. I wanted to know who she was. I wanted her to understand that yes, they probably will be talking, but at the end of the day, like, it's kind of like I'm his main, you know? So I wanted to meet her and kind of like basically put my dominance out there. Yeah. And then once I met her, talked to her, see that she was nice, I was like, okay, you guys go and you have your fun, and you guys, you do you. But I guess like the night had went well, but I don't think the relationship that they had went pretty far. I don't think she wanted to be with him or really anything. So I think he got mad with that. And he just kind of turned his, like, he just got angry with me and was just like saying that I'm having sex with all these people, which I wasn't. And saying that the only time he can have sex with someone is if, like, I would introduce them. And like, for example, one of the girls, I remember I had introduced them to a friend, and I already knew that they were gonna do something. Yeah. And so, but my boundary was, don't do that with me. You're spending time with me, even though I'm introducing you to her right now, but y'all do that on your own time. That was more so for me. Like, I want you to do that stuff on your own time. So unfortunately, later that night, they ended up, or no, it was in the morning, they ended up having sex in my bed. I was so livid. I was like, are you kidding me? So, you know, I was not quiet about that. Let me say that. Like, of course we got into it, and he was saying, well, you're over here, you can have people come over here and you can do whatever you want to do in your bed. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So my experience with him was just like very unhealthy, because I guess it was like more competition than an actual relationship.
We're kind of letting a lot of those insecurities just run rampant, and
yes,
sounds like he failed to see from your perspective, and I think he definitely let jealousy get in the way there.
Yeah.
That's a big one, because it's funny, a lot of people think that, like, just because you're polyamorous, like, oh, you don't get jealous. I'm one of the most jealous people I know. I'm very, very territorial. I'm very, very, like, this is my person, and that's something that you have to learn to communicate. Like, hey, I'm having this insecurity, or I'm taking this really personally. I'm affronted. I need a little bit of, reassurance right now. And you have to learn to like really communicate those parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you like, every relationship does have jealousy. And, it sounds like for you, your boundary was the bed and
Yeah.
and your space. Hey, I
Exactly.
don't mind if you guys have fun. I'm glad you guys are hitting it off, but I don't want to be there when you guys enjoy each other's time. And then
Exactly.
to have that boundary violated is very frustrating, and it
Yeah.
breaks the trust, and you feel disrespected. So
Right.
I think we see those same dynamics in monogamous relationships as well,
Mhm.
fairly often.
Yeah.
And so for me, I feel like two of the biggest parts of any relationship, to make them successful, are communication,
Mm.
but also actually internalizing and actually understanding what your partner is saying, because
Yeah.
you can listen to them all day, but
Yeah.
until you show through your actions and that you heard and understood what they were asking of you,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean you have to be comfortable with everything that your partner needs. You can talk and you can compromise and you can say, hey, this is where I'm willing to meet you. But I think that you definitely have to be very, very diligent about respecting what your partner is asking of you, or
Mhm.
acknowledging that you might not be able to meet exactly what they need, and actually talking about it. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people, especially people our age,
Mhm.
don't have that level of communication yet,
Mhm.
um, or aren't provided that level of communication or empathy in their home growing up.
Exactly.
We don't have a lot of us don't even have healthy examples of monogamous relationships in our lives. How are we supposed to translate what we learned to polyamory, so
Yeah.
I think it definitely, it's unfortunate that I think a lot of people that are younger that do try it out and get into it do end up having these very, unhealthy dynamics at first,
Yeah.
and kind of have to learn the hard way what does and doesn't work for them.
Mhm.
And I think part of that also comes from the fact that our society doesn't really talk about polyamory very often. It's
Exactly.
not super mainstream. It's not something that a lot of people are very open about. So even people who are curious, who are, seeking answers, may not know where to look either.
Yeah. No, those are really good points. And then also too, like when I was introduced to polyamorous relationships, it was more just like, oh, you can have a partner and you can have sex with as many people as you want. And that was really it. And then even too, like, because I supported polyamorous relationships, and a lot of times people will be like, oh, so that means you're not in love with that person. Like, you can't fall in love. There's absolutely no way. And I'm like, no, it's not
That's
that at all.
that's one of the myths or the stereotypes that I laugh about the most. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how the thing is, like, with monogamous people, the way I try to put it is like, okay, so if you have more than one sibling, you love them, right?
Yeah.
And you love them for different reasons, and you have, you love your brother and you love your sister for different reasons, and you have your separate dynamic, and then maybe even a group dynamic, right? You might interact with them at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't get upset that you love each of them differently, or
Yeah.
you love your friends. You can have, a lot of people have more than one very, very close friend, and they might even know each other. You might all spend time together but also spend time together separately.
Yeah.
And so in those dynamics, we're so good at balancing, sharing time, and like, the group dynamic and then the separate dynamic, and we don't think twice of it. We're like, well, of course, it's my family, it's my friends,
Mm.
of course I have more than one,
Yeah.
and I think it's hard for people to wrap their mind around when like love and physicality are involved, but
Yeah.
it's the same concept.
Huh.
You can love, if you want to, you can love more than one person at once, and it can be very meaningful and have a lot of depth to it, and it can be very passionate and intimate. And I think a lot of people, I think, just don't question, and they're raised monogamous, and that's what they see, and that's what our society pushes, and that works for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
um, but for people that are curious, or for people that are just inherently born that way, you're just like those monogamous people. You don't know how to think any differently. You don't understand how to love just one person.
Yeah.
So it's again, I think some people do inherently have it, and then I do think some people, you know, are pushed to it or become curious because of different dynamics that they end up in later in their life. But I do feel like if we were more open about it as a society, that a lot more people would opt to try different versions of it.
Would you like to talk a little bit about your experience?
When I was a really, really little kid, you know, people ask, I think they ask a similar question when you identify as bisexual or gay. They're like, well, how did you know? Ever since I was very young, like when I would have crushes, I had like little lists and it was like all the names of the people that I liked and why I liked each one. Like it was for different reasons. And my mom would, you know, say like, oh, you're fickle, or like, oh, you're, you know, like you don't know how to decide what you want. But I firmly feel that like just inherently, I always knew, you know, I saw a lot of great traits in people and I didn't feel the need to limit myself. And so as I got older, you know, there's those societal boundaries and that conditioning. You start to think like, oh, I'm wrong. And like I was raised religiously Christian and my dad was Catholic, so definitely frowned upon. And so you start to like internalize the shame and not try it because, you know, you're young and your peers aren't trying these things, or it's not something that's normal to talk about. So I was fairly reserved about all of those feelings, and I did pretty much essentially have monogamous relationships up until the point I was 15. There was a gentleman that I was with from 15 to about 17. His mom was involved in BDSM and she was polyamorous. And that's actually how I was first introduced to it. He became curious about it and asked if I wanted to try the dynamic, and kind of similar, there's a little bit of congruencies with your experience as well. He became jealous because, you know, I was still going to school. He had already graduated, and so, you know, I was meeting people and I was very socially active. Even though I'm fairly introverted, I never think of myself as a social person. I was absolutely more social than he was. And so I told him, like, I just feel like there's going to be a discrepancy in our dynamic where I'm meeting people and, you know, I might fall in love or, you know, have these things, and you don't go out and meet people. So I was like, I'm very open to this, but we need to establish boundaries. We need to have better communication than we do now. And like, you need to find something that you can do that provides you the socialization to find these bonds that you're looking for, you know? And so, like I predicted, I met someone and I told him, like, hey, you know, I met this guy and I'm curious about it, so I'm gonna go meet him, and do you want to know about him, or, you know, do you want to see a photo of him? And because our boundaries were also very, very loose. He just told me, you know, go have sex with other people, not in my space, et cetera, et cetera. Very basic boundaries. We didn't get too deep into things. And so essentially he called me one day while I was at work and he just told me, hey, we're not polyamorous anymore. We're not talking about it. And that's that. And I got livid and I did a very shitty thing. I was 15 and I went and I spite cheated on him. And that's another common misconception. I think a lot of people think like you can't cheat in polyamorous relationships, but you can. If you you know, draw these boundaries with your partner and they don't follow them, that you can still emotionally cheat in polyamorous relationships. You can still physically cheat in polyamorous relationships. There's still boundaries and guidelines and rules to be followed between these partners. It's an agreement. And so after him, I ended up dating a gentleman. This was my longest relationship. We had been together maybe like a year. And one day he opened up to me and he felt terrible because he had this crush on a coworker and he really liked her and he wanted to explore that, but he felt like it meant that he didn't love me. And I told him, dude, I'm totally open to, he knew I had been polyamorous before him. And I told him, if you want to date this girl, if you want to explore that, if she's okay with it, go for it. And for him, he couldn't wrap his head around that dynamic. He's like, no, like I have to choose. And so he, you know, I watched him internalize all that guilt and like, you know, penalize himself for having feelings for more than one person. And I felt bad. Ultimately, he ended up choosing me, being really conflicted for a really long time. It stressed our relationship. And I finally told him, like, look, dude, I'm your girlfriend. If you don't know whether or not you want to be with me, I'm not the one to talk to about that. Go talk to our roommate or someone else, you know, go talk to your friends. But figure it out and then let me know how you feel. We ended up staying together a really, really long time, and then ended that relationship for a lot of different reasons. After him, I was in a lot of very casual relationships. And by casual, I mean like we just weren't cohabitating. I loved all of these people. I really did. And some of them intersected. I was in maybe like 8 or 9 different relationships throughout the course of 3 years. And so some of them did have overlap. They all knew about each other. I would, you know, tell them stories about each other. And some of them were people that preferred monogamy, but wanted to be with me, so were willing to compromise. And so I kind of explored, and during that time learned a lot about like what does and doesn't work for me. And during that time, I also realized like there's no point for me to ever, you know, compromise for a partner to the point where I will be monogamous, because I realized in all of those different relationships that I had that wasn't what I wanted. And so during that time, I think I was about 19. During that time, I met a girl that I'm still seeing, and we met online. Most of my dating has been online. She had a main partner at the time already. She had a male partner. She wanted to explore polyamory. They had just opened up their relationship. And so I started dating her. We were very bonded for a lot of reasons. We had very similar pasts, and it just made us feel very connected instantly. And so she has been my longest relationship. It's about 5 or 6 years now. And she has fluctuated with me through all of it. If I had a partner that wanted to be monogamous, I stayed friends with her and we stayed in touch. If I was polyamorous, we would see each other. I asked her to marry me. She was smarter than me, and she said no. and I got very jealous. After that, you know, I didn't talk to her for a little while, and then I asked if I could come back into her life. She was very gracious and forgiving, and I asked if I was very, very jealous of her other partner, and I asked, you know, hey, can I date you guys if he and you are comfortable with that? With the intention that if I'm comfortable, maybe we might have a threesome or, you know, some form of group dynamic, just so that I can see what, you know, what you see in him, and I can see you interact with the other person that you love, so I can better understand it, so maybe I can work through and work past my jealousy. And so you know, we went on this date to like an arcade, and it was really cute and fun. We like went in an Uber and everything. I felt comfortable, and we ended up having a threesome that night. And you know, I'm totally a cuck. I'm a huge cuck. So I watched them interact, and you know, watched their love, and I became so much less insecure after that, because I realized that our relationships were just different. I realized that like she and I were bonded for reasons that he could never provide to her, like that we had this deeper emotional connection, and that we were bonded for, and all of those things are really important to me. So like seeing what I provided her in our relationship from almost a third party perspective, even though I was there, it made me feel much more safe and much more comfortable, and assured that, you know, she wasn't gonna like leave me for him, or that she loved him more. It was just different. She loved us for different reasons, and I couldn't really grasp that. Like it seems obvious, but I couldn't grasp it until I was in it, you know? So I was supposed to see her this past year. We were supposed to go on a trip out of the country. We had to postpone it because of COVID. She has separated with that partner that we had the threesome with. She's with a new main partner now, and that's going really well. And we talk periodically, but long distance polyamorous too is pretty hard, because it's like I hold all of this love for her, and like I have nowhere, I don't have a main partner out here right now, so like I don't really have anywhere to channel all of that. And so
Yeah.
I do have like love and support, but I still get lonely. And I
Yeah,
think
of
sometimes
course.
that people are like, wait, what? Because I'll talk about, like I'm the most single I've ever been in my life. And then I talk about my girlfriend and they're like, what? And I'm like, well, I'm geographically single. I'm a bachelor. I'm very lonely. But do I have this person that I fully intend to grow old with? Yes. Is
Yeah,
she very far away? Yes. And so I still get lonely, or,
of course.
I crave human touch and that connection. So there's a lot of different ways to be polyamorous.
Yeah.
And so the thing I love about that relationship is I feel like she helped me heal myself.
Nice. I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's very interesting, especially that what made you come up with the decision that maybe if I, well, I think you did say it, but maybe if I sat and was apart, like sat and experienced them being intimate, like how were you able to conclude that that's what you needed to do to help you?
I She is so gentle and so patient, and I felt like it was unfair for me. Like obviously there's a reason why she chose this partner, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason why, and I just felt like it was unfair for me to keep harboring any animosity towards him, or just I didn't want to muddle the relationship with my negative emotions anymore. And
Yeah.
I think it's very important to hold space for those emotions. Like, you know, a partner's partner might hurt them and they come to you and they're like, hey, like we had a fight and I'm really hurt. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important how you handle it. And I don't think you should ever, speak poorly of someone else's partner, because they're still going to stay with them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to create a safe space where your partner can vent if they need that.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like it was just unfair. I felt like I was holding myself back. I really cared for her and I really loved her and I wanted to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like part of that is being accepting of your partner's other partners, whether or not you like them as a person or whatever. Like your partner loves that person and gets gratification and joy from their interactions with this person, so why not make it civil?
Yeah.
And so I felt like, for me personally, that was the next step in confronting my jealousy. Because again, like I have in the past let jealousy drive me to a very toxic place in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was just kind of like jumping off a diving board into the deep end, not knowing how to swim. Just like, you know what? I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off and we're going to see how it goes. And it ended up giving me a lot of clarity and a lot more comfortability in our relationship.
And since that, because now you did say that she has a new partner, do you feel that jealousy again, or is it just because you experienced that one time?
Not at all. She had already met this new partner, so I told her, like maybe when I come back home, I'll meet your partner. And then obviously I know if I ask you to move to Texas, I'll be asking them as well. I want her to be happy. So like if she's happy with this other partner, and they want to cohabitate, I personally don't necessarily like to cohabitate with my partner in my living space on a day-to-day basis. So like I could have my own room, we could have an office and a creative space, and then they can live together. I'm very flexible. But I don't know, like the jealousy as far as in that specific relationship, it's gone. Like I want to see her continue to make bonds with other people and have healthy, fulfilling relationships. Again, like I was saying, the loneliness, like I'm glad that she has someone out there, I'm glad she has a shoulder to cry on when she needs someone. And all of the things that I can't do right now because of the distance, I'm glad that she's found other people that can provide that to her. And it gives me a sense of peace and happiness. So I'm glad that I took that leap and confronted my jealousy and learned how to process it a little bit better. I've also, started reading a lot more. I know you see me post, but I've started reading a lot more like self-help, or trying to read daily things about polyamory and learn from other people's experiences and listen to other people's stories, just to provide more perspective.
So my last thing for you, when you were younger and you were in this like, you know, people around you probably wasn't really supporting the idea. What made you keep going? What made you be like, you know, this is me and I still want to embrace it? Because I'm assuming because for me, for example, at one point when I was getting into BDSM and it was kind of like weird and not a thing, I kind of felt embarrassed into a point where I was just like, okay, I'm not even kind of relating myself to this because no one likes it or no one's into it.
And there's such opposition. You feel like a sense of shame about who you are.
Yeah. So for someone like for someone who went through that time or is going through that time, what would you say to them on, you know, do not give up, I guess?
I've always had a strong sense of self, and it hasn't been easy to pursue and present that publicly. It's been a lot of inner work and a lot of tribulations. But I think that at the end of the day, like, if there's something that you're curious about, anything in life, pursue it. Like, we get, as far as I know, we get this one moment. So do you want to spend your time wishing that you could try things, or do you want to try them and see if they're for you or not?
Exactly.
I think that, what is it? I think our generation says FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yes.
That's my one fear of missing out, is like, my fear is that to end up on the back end of my life and to feel like I didn't pursue myself and like my true identity. And I feel like it's very important as an individual to trust your inner intuition. I think that we know who we are. We know what we want. We have all of these factors outside of us that, you know, may sway us in one direction or another, and it may be easier to be a certain way or present yourself a certain way. But I feel like when you pursue yourself, like, I would rather pursue myself and always know that I'm honoring my needs than end up, you know, being what everybody else wants. Because one, you can't make everybody happy all at once.
Exactly.
And two, just the amount of, I think it's cognitive dissonance, you know, just that disconnectedness from yourself, that hurts. That wears away at a person. So like, I think it's important to take time to figure out what you want out of life and pursue it.
Yeah. And I want to piggyback off of that too. If you are someone that's listening and you feel that you're having complications with that, or you're having a hard time really being able to express yourself or to find out about yourself, it does take time. It's not something that you have to rush, and it could be ugly, it could be hard. It's not like an easy journey of finding who you are, especially because like we have so many distractions and so many like other opinions out there. And so just don't give up on the journey just because it's not easy, or if you're sad or you're feeling depressed. It takes time, and over time you will learn about yourself, and the experience too, like with trying things and being curious, it adds on and it helps you figure out what you're into and what you're not into. And even though my experience in the past wasn't the best, I'm still super happy that I got to experience it, because now based off of that, I know that the next time I have my next partner, I will talk to them about that. I might set more stern boundaries, more clear boundaries, communicate a little bit more, and see if it works. And if it's toxic, or I see that it's not going bad, or if it's not going good and we're like kind of disrespecting each other, then I'll talk up a little bit. But that was about 5 years ago. And then looking at myself now, or who I am today, because of me exploring and sitting with myself a little bit more, I feel that I'm a lot more comfortable expressing what I want and my needs. Like, I'm aware of it now compared to back then. I wasn't. So it takes time to really learn about yourself. So I deeply appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
I appreciate you asking for my perspective. I was really excited when you reached out to me.
Yay! That's good. Like, you're an interesting person to me, and so I'm just super happy that I have the opportunity to have a friend like you. So if you ever like want to do another episode about anything else, like, just know that is always open for you.
I'm definitely interested.
Yay. Good. I'm actually, after having this conversation, I'm actually very excited to like experience it again and see how it goes. And I really hope if anyone is listening to this that it helped you in some type of way.